Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. Enjoy complimentary access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with a welcome offer of 150,000 points after you spend $20,000 on purchases on the card within your first 3 months of membership, your business can soar to new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
Close your eyes, exhale, feel your body relax, and let go of whatever you're carrying today.
Well, I'm letting go of the worry that I wouldn't get my new contacts in time for this class. I got them delivered free from 1-800-CONTACTS. Oh my gosh, they're so fast.
And breathe.
Oh, sorry. I almost couldn't breathe when I saw the discount they gave me on my first order. Oh, sorry. Namaste.
Visit 1-800-CONTACTS.com today to save on your first order.
1-800-CONTACTS.
Learning through play starts with Lego Duplo. With Lego Duplo, toddlers can develop real-life skills while having fun with colorful bricks made just for them. Large, easy to grip, and safe to explore. When children express themselves with Lego Duplo, they build patience, problem-solving, and empathy. See your child learn perseverance and self-expression with everything they imagine and create. Visit lego.com/preschool to learn more.
If you went on a road trip and you didn't stop for a Big Mac or drop a crispy fry between the car seats or use your McDonald's bag as a placemat, then that wasn't a road trip. It was just a really long drive. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's.
Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts.
Misha Rubin, welcome to the conversation today.
Hi, John. Really great to be here.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from New York. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about facilitating meaningful, intentional changes at work and in life. A wonderful topic. I think we all really aspire to just having meaning and purpose in what we do. And sometimes we find ourselves in the grind. We find ourselves on the hamster wheel, and we wonder, are we doing the things that will help us feel meaning and purpose? Will we have that happiness and that joy? Or are we kind of destined for just this meaningless grind? And I think the answer is, if we don't change things, we may be destined for perpetuating, that same kind of circumstance. But the good news is we have power to change things. We can interrupt that cycle, and we can make intentional choices that will allow us to move things in a different direction. But change is hard. So we're going to talk about what that intentional change can look like, how we can start that process. And I'm really thrilled to have a chance to discuss that with you today. As we get started, I wanted to share Misha's bio with everybody. Misha Rubin is a career educator and CEO of the Career Leap. He helps executives and professionals reinvent careers, find dream jobs, and thrive at work. He was a partner at Ernst & Young, where he spent 15 fruitful years of his career. He sold and managed hundreds of millions worth of projects and guided careers of hundreds of professionals. Born and raised in the Ukraine, Misha is on the board of Worldwide Orphans, a nonprofit that supports children at risk globally. And in 2022, he founded Children of Ukraine to support children with trauma during and post-Russia invasion. Misha received the 2022 Humanitarian Award for his work in the Ukraine, and he is an adoptive parent of 3. There's many more things I could highlight about your background, but I'm going to pause there. Anything else you would like to share with the audience by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in?
Well, I would say that I want to point to one of the things you said, that change is hard, right? Because
Yeah.
as you're reading my bio, I also get present. Like, I'm the person who made a lot of changes in my life and made a lot of leaps. Whether I lived in 4 different countries, I speak 4 languages, I adopted 3 kids in 2 years. Like I flew to Ukraine after war. Like I jumped off my corporate career to start my business. But what I really want to say, that it's actually much harder not to change. So the context that change is hard is actually, it takes something for change. But I think when it's in the flow of you and your life, it's actually easy. At least it's easier than not doing that, what it is you're supposed to do in your life.
Well, I agree with that. I think it seems easier not to change, right? Because you just kind of go, you have momentum, you have inertia, and you just go with the flow of your life and you go with the flow of things. But especially when things aren't going well, when you feel stuck, when you feel like, you know,
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want, like that dream house or ride, is a great feeling. That's why the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you save when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
It's hard to get up in the morning. It's hard to go to work. You just, the circumstances you're in are not what you want in life. It can feel easier to just kind of be miserable and to just sit in it and to just, disassociate, maybe use substances, maybe just grumble and complain, whatever. It can feel easier to do those things. The reality is, I think you're absolutely right. The reality is that's way harder than actually going about the work of changing to improve your situation, to improve your life, and making those intentional choices. Change does feel uncomfortable. Change disrupts. Change puts you out of your comfort zone. It can cause you to get out there into places where there's uncertainty. And sometimes uncertainty, even though uncertainty can lead to positive future outcomes, even though it's that possibility, uncertainty, still, you might feel more comfortable sitting in what you don't like, that the uncomfortable reality of the current present state. And so that's where a lot of people find themselves, and we trick ourselves into thinking that it's just easier and better to just stick where we're at because it's comfortable. It's what we know. We often will refer to, phrases like the grass, is always greener on the other side, indicating that our circumstances really aren't that bad. So we should just put up with it. I think there's some truth to those sorts of things and truth to finding contentment in our present circumstances, the Buddhist philosophies and those sorts of things. Like there's mindfulness and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is we can take ownership of where we're at and where we want to go. And we can choose to change and to make improvements. And there's a lot of power in that. It can lead us to a lot of exciting new things. And while that takes energy, that takes time, that takes passion, that takes resilience, I agree with you. I think ultimately that's less work in the long run than sitting in, perhaps the misery you find yourself in currently.
Yeah, where I would challenge you a little bit here is just say we just live in a lot of preconceived ideas about the world, and
sure.
Whether that we just accept as a reality. I think fundamentally with people making change is really not about what they find comfortable and uncomfortable. Sometimes they really don't know how to. And I feel like, especially in the world of career, and I talk about it as a guilty party myself, like I spent quite many years in a career that was successful by all marks, but I just didn't, and I knew it wasn't mine. I just really didn't know how to go about change. So I don't necessarily. I think our preconceived notion about what's safe, what's not, definitely play along. But fundamentally, are we empowered to making change, and what would empower us? That's a fundamental question. And when I think about people careers, and I spoke with thousands of professionals and been on dozens of podcasts, interviews, and worked with hundreds of clients directly. And what I identified that from career perspective, there are three things that driving our career choices. And I'm guilty of all three. So I'm not here to judge anybody. So as listeners hear this, just see. So one is other people opinion. So other people opinions, that could be like your parents wanting something of you, might not be, could be just the environment that you're in that says what's good or bad. The second thing is circumstances. So it's circumstantial, the way people find jobs, the recruiter called, or, ex-boss called, or this opportunity showed up. So it's like a lot of circumstantial decision. And the third one is inertia. And inertia is where we stay where we are just because we don't know how to leave, or we think it's too risky, or whatever it is, right? So if I look at these three career drivers, career decision drivers, it's very easy to see why a lot of professionals and executives, and even very, very successful people, end up really disempowered or not satisfied with their careers. And then the question is, and that's something that I faced as I did something that I don't recommend anybody to do. I jumped off the cliff of my corporate career. And as I was flying off the cliff, and I realized there are so many people that are either ready for what's next, or kind of being in a wrong position from the very beginning, or just ready for change, or just, there's like different signs for different people, signs for change. I realized that what we're missing is really the career education. We never really were taught about, how do I find what's the right thing for me? What is the right role? What is the right industry? What would be the right company? And how do I go about it? How do I go about figuring out? So the past, 4 years, that's what I've spent time doing. I've been working with a lot of executives and professionals I worked, with like Wall Street executives. I worked with CEOs. I worked with artists and nurses and engineers and accountants, you name it, like a very wide spectrum of people. And what I developed is what I call the Career Leap method, is the methodology that helps people to actually, in a systematic way, answer the question about what's next for me and how do I go about it.
Yeah, great thoughts. And I agree that we have all these preconceived notions. We make all these assumptions, and there are all these biases that are going on in our heads around how we look at, the life well lived, quote unquote, the ideal life. We have all these sayings, keeping up with the Joneses, all these expectations, and so many people make choices around various aspects of their lives. It doesn't even have to just be career, right? It can be, family decisions, when to start a family, get married, have kids, whatever, to buy a house, to go into a certain career, go to college or not go to college, go career path, whatever, right? There's all these different decisions that we make. And a lot of times we're making them, for, what I would suggest is not particularly the best reasons. Now, granted, like you said, we all do it though, because we all are influenced by all these other voices. We're all influenced by social norms. We're influenced by our family. We're influenced by our own ego. We're influenced by all these different things, and it's hard to get past all of those things to really tap into, what do I really want? Like, what do I really enjoy? What really maximizes my potential? What really enlivens me and brings fulfillment to me? Right. And sometimes we just simply don't know until we get into our career and figure out what we like and don't like, right?
What I discovered that it's that all these things, exist, but I think that what is not developed in our society is a counterweight, is the method, is really the education. It's not like people don't want to, or people are, because I've been working with very educated, very successful people. It's just the question, so how do I go about it? If I want to really realign my life, if I want to find what's next for me that's aligned with with my values, with where I want to make impact, how do I go about it? So to me, it's like there is the general human condition that, like humans are the way they are. But I think what's missing is really the counterweight of tools for people that really want to make change, how to go about it.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. How do we start going about it? You have a particular method that you use when you're working with your clients. You've worked with hundreds, thousands of people to help them through this process. Talk us through a little bit through, how you go about helping people work through discovering, what those core values are for themselves, what they want, and really thinking through that change process.
Yeah. So I would say, like, how do we figure out what's next? And I think in that formula, there are 3 ingredients that I look at. So one ingredient is related to what I call future self, is like looking at you. And I think 10-year mark is kind of far enough out, but not crazy out. But it's kind of like what type of a life you want to be, want to have in 10 years from now. Who's that person? Like, let's say you accomplished everything you wanted, you've done, you dealt with whatever roadblocks. Who's that person on the other side for people to connect to that future? I think that's one really important input that for figuring out what's next. The second one, I call it your career blueprint or vocational blueprint. And that is, so if you think about, we have a lot of different criteria of what it is we want. But for a lot of people, that criteria is not very well defined. So that's why they have a hard time evaluating opportunities that come their way. So that criteria, that's what I call career blueprint, consists from your inner criteria. So for instance, your vocational value system that originated when you were a child. If you don't understand what it is, and if it's not articulated for you in language, it will be very hard for you to use it and evaluate opportunities. And in fact, when I work with my clients, once they distinguish their career value system, they instantly understand why they're not happy in their current job. It stops being like a mystery or some like just intuition. So that's your inner criteria. That's an example of inner criteria, but there is also, what motivates you, your strengths. There's like a lot of things go there. Then there's your aspirational criteria, and that criteria is about what it is you want. How it is you want to grow, what it is you want to learn, what type of challenges, or maybe the things that you don't want. And the third type of criteria is the criteria, I call it integrational, how your work and non-work life integrates. So if you had all this criteria, if you could prioritize what's really important for you for that, then you would have a very good way. So instead of making just circumstantial decisions that come in your way, you would have a very good way to evaluate. So now we have 2 ingredients, right? The first one was future self. The second one, your career blueprint, which is a set of criteria. And the third piece, I call it career leap map. And this is a list of ideas. This is a systematic exploration of ideas of where and what you could be doing. So one of the big pitfalls for people, they don't really explore enough ideas of what's possible. They usually keep ideas very narrow, and that's very limiting factor. But someplace in the intersection of your future self, your career blueprint, and your career leap map, what I guaranteed to find a bunch of ideas that are both exciting, that are both pragmatic, and that are aligned with the future that you want. And that's where I work with my clients to further research them, investigate them, and understand whether they're worth pursuit. So that's kind of like a high-level formula that I use. And so far, it produces results.
Yeah, and I like all 3 of those and how they do overlap. So you're looking for the overlap, the Venn diagram connection points. And, in an ideal world, you're going to be able to find those connection points. And I truly believe that most people, as they do the work that you're talking about, as they discover and uncover what those areas are for them, if nothing else, at least it's going to allow them to be aware, right? And to be more familiar with what those areas are, so that they have a broader aperture of like possibility, right?
Well, yeah, I would just say not just in ideal world. I think I always was interested in developing tools that very pragmatic. Listen, I did a lot of spiritual things in my life and familiar with a lot of ideas, but I'm also a management consultant. So when I develop my methodologies, to me, what was very important that my ideas ground kind of our higher aspiration, that the ground it so people can actually implement them. So when I'm talking about this method, it's not about ideal world. I'm talking about it's like in real world, people will discover and will have enough ideas. Let me maybe give you like a few examples.
What I mean by ideal world is not that you can't discover. I completely agree. I think this will allow you to discover. The ideal world piece is not everyone is in a position to follow all of the possibilities that emerge, right? But it allows you to discover them, and allowing yourself to discover and opening your aperture of understanding and possibility is huge. That is really, really powerful. But there's no dishonor in doing what it takes to provide for your family, doing a job that maybe you don't love because you got to put food on the table, pay the bills, pay the rent, get your kid off to college, whatever, right? And sometimes we make sacrifices. Parents do that for their kids. We do that for each other all the time, and there's no dishonor in that, right? And so depending on someone's circumstances, their situation, their family dynamics, whatever, there's all these different things that constrain us. And we can try to work through those constraints, but the reality is the reality, and people find themselves in different situations. But regardless of situation, I think there's so much power in what you're describing, because so often we put artificial limits on the possibilities because of those constraints that we find ourselves in, and we put far more constraints. We constrain our mental model, so we put far more constraints on us than are actually there. We think we're constrained more than we actually are, given the circumstances we find ourselves in.
Yeah,
and so
I would say.
Go ahead.
It's totally true, but I think what we're starting with a constraint in our mind, and one of the reasons people can't explore, because what I discovered, regardless of your circumstances, you can discover options, because part of it, you have your aspirational criteria that is taken into account, your circumstances.
Yeah.
But where people start with all the constraints they have, that they think they have to do, that they cannot even explore. So I think constraints always exist. You can apply them later, and that's part of the process, but you don't want to start with a constrained mind. You don't want to start with a mind that already, because that's how people end up stuck, because they have all these circumstances and they not allowing themselves to examine and explore the pieces of the puzzle, and then they just stay justified by the circumstances. And then at the end of the day, I'm a parent, and we need to understand, like, what is the best, for instance, we can provide for children. Actually, I think the best value you can provide for your child and the best lesson is you living the best life. So of course you want to provide for your children when you want to, but very often people constrain themselves with the children as an excuse, where in reality it's not actually clear whether they actually providing a service for their children, or they creating a blueprint of another constrained life for their kids.
I want to give you an example. Just this is from my personal life. So yeah, I think you're right. I think we often make a false dichotomy in our mind about some of those trade-offs, right? Or some of the sacrifice, or some of those sorts of things. And, we all have family dynamics, family baggage, pros, cons, all that kind of stuff, right? And me, just like everyone else, there's things that I think about my childhood that were amazing, things that I think were not so amazing, things that, I think, I'm going to try to not replicate with my family and my children, whatever. But overall, I think my parents did a good job. And I think my parents certainly loved their kids and tried to create a loving home. And one of the things that I appreciate that my father taught me, whether this was intentional or not, was kind of the entrepreneurial spirit around just being willing to take a leap. I mean, kind of like what you did, like the leap of faith.
How amazing.
You know, and so he did that. And did he do it necessarily the best way? The best way for my family? I don't know. I mean, who knows? Like
You turned
hindsight,
out.
right?
That's all I know, that you turned out with whatever way he
I
did.
turned out, and hindsight 2020, whatever, right? But what I do know, in my formative years, my early teenage years through into adulthood, he left a very secure job. You know, our family was not rich, but we were, you know, firmly middle class. We were, you know, making it okay. And then
Yes.
he left that job, and we didn't have
Yes.
health insurance, we didn't have a steady
Mm,
income, and we were dirt poor. Like you know, we didn't
right.
know where food was coming from, we didn't know if we were going to pay the mortgage, and all of the kids had to chip in, so we all got jobs and we all helped to cover family expenses. Like that was the dynamic. And was that ideal? Probably not. But you know, it taught us some amazing lessons. And ultimately, fast forward, you know, 25, 30 years, and I'm super grateful for the lessons that it taught me.
Sounds
And
like
so
it was
you're right.
ideal.
Like I think
Sounds
sometimes,
like it was ideal. Sounds like,
yeah.
well, like there's
So
nothing could ever replace those lessons that you got from that moment.
yeah, so he could have, my father could have stuck with a situation that, you know, now I know more about the situation. Like he's talked to me about it in detail.
Yeah.
He could have stuck with the situation, been miserable, but done it for
Mm,
the family. And that probably would have manifested in many ways that wasn't ideal for the family. But he made the choice to leave that situation and to try to strike out on his own. Didn't work particularly well. He wasn't particularly successful, but he made that choice, and he demonstrated for us the willingness to do that, right? And that was powerful. And so I agree with you. I think sometimes we get too stuck, we limit ourselves too much, and we worry. I mean, it's good to worry about your kids, it's good to worry about your family,
sure.
but sometimes we don't know the future, we don't know what's going to happen. And so, you know, sometimes you just got to take that leap of faith.
Sometimes we don't know what's the best for our children. So,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying, that courage is an amazing quality, and that a lot of people that, stuck in their careers, that's a lot of stuckness driven by fear. And that courage is an amazing thing to develop and to explore and to examine. And there is no better lesson for children than your personal courage in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I can certainly point to my father as an example of courage. Well, Misha, I note the time. I can't believe the time has flown by this fast, but I need to let you go and get on with your busy day. I'm sure you have things you need to get to. But before we wrap things up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can get in touch with you, find out more about your work, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Beautiful. So you can find me at misharubin.com, or actually the best place is LinkedIn. Just search for Misha Rubin. I post there regularly, and that's the best way to connect with me or even to reach out to me. And I always leave most of my emails with this thing: life is beautiful and keep exploring. And that's kind of the beauty of life, that we have opportunity to explore new ideas. And I'm grateful for those who listening to this, and maybe we'll get something new out of this conversation.
Awesome. Misha, thank you so much. It's just been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Misha can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.